tonight. And, of course, tonight, let me get the picture up. Our featured guest is Ben Goertzel, CEO of Novamente. And I want to say welcome, Ben. Welcome to the program.
Oh, well, hello. Thanks for inviting me.
Yes, well, you're very welcome, Ben. Everyone is pretty familiar with you and some of your work because, of course, Bruce Klein, one of the founders of the Immortality Institute, eventually joined on with Novamente as he thought artificial intelligence was the best way to leverage his capabilities to produce extreme longevity in human beings. And I would kind of have to agree, but you know what? We've been talking about artificial intelligence for decades and decades and how it perhaps will help everyone, and yet here we are today wondering when AGI is possible. Now, some of the people who have been watching the videos here at the Ustream channel know that, and one of them, you predicted, I believe, we could achieve artificial general intelligence in perhaps 5 years if we really, really tried. First question, do you think that is still true? You perhaps said that a couple of years ago, but is that still true? If a lot of national resources and money were advocated toward artificial general intelligence research, could we achieve that in 5 years?
Well, it's of course difficult to predict in detail the progress of a research technology, but I would stand by that statement. Yeah, I think if we had a really significant infusion of money into AGI research, creating a human-level AI in 5 years, certainly 7 or 8 years would certainly be possible. And I mean, this is one thing I said at the Convergence '08 conference last month in California. I was on a panel about the relation of AI and the politics and economics and so forth. And one of the statements I made was that instead of spending trillions of dollars to bail out corrupt banks and incompetent automakers, we should be putting 500 billion into AI, 500 billion into nanotech, 500 billion into life extension, and so forth. And you'd see a heck of a lot of progress that way, without a doubt. And I don't think it would take even that much money. I mean, in terms of my own projects.
Exactly. Well, I look at Novamente and how much you're able to do with really a very small staff. All the research you're able to do, and Eric in the chat asked, would a larger Novamente team help out a lot in developing AGI? And I think, well, the answer is obvious, as you're talking about. If the U.S. is willing to spend $500 billion bailing out some banks, you'd think that they would have a lot better chance of getting out of trouble, societal trouble, by pouring more resources into nanotech and AGI.
And life extension.
Yeah, and life extension, which... oh, yeah, go ahead, Ben. You were going to say something?
Oh, I was just going to say, one of the questions on the chat was, what was the money needed for? Is it for staff? Is it for better computers and so forth? And I think the main need right now is just money to pay smart people to work on building the thinking machine, to work on programming and working out various computer science issues. And what we would need to make a thinking machine, according to my own designs, would be at worst, say, a couple dozen people working concertedly on that for 5 or 10 years and not on other things. And that's just a really hard thing to pull off in the current socio-economic situation, because people need to make money to support their families and so forth, and particularly people who really have the skills needed to build a thinking machine tend not to be fresh out of college. They tend to have a little more experience and have accumulated more responsibilities in their lives, and they want to get paid. And
yeah.
It's just amazing how hard it is to gather funding to create general intelligence. And just to keep going with the comments I'm seeing on the chat, someone's asked, why doesn't, for example, Ray Kurzweil fund and build that bigger team?
Exactly.
And, I mean, I know Ray, and I've discussed this point with him, and I don't want to put words in Ray's mouth, but I think his attitude is that even though he likes me and thinks I'm a really smart guy and my heart is in the right place, I don't think he feels comfortable placing a bet on any one team. His view is more like he has projected that general intelligence is going to come about in a few decades.
Yeah.
And he's very confident of that statistical prediction, but he's not confident in betting on who is going to do it and exactly when. And I think Ray's own scientific intuition is that general intelligence is more likely to come about through human brain emulation, through someone making a detailed model of how the human brain works in silico. And if that's going to be the route to do it, then the time isn't quite here yet, because we don't really know enough about how the brain works to make a serious brain simulation yet. So if it's going to be done through brain simulation, I think Kurzweil's right. It's going to happen in the late 2020s once we have much better brain scanning apparatus. Whereas if I'm right, or someone else taking a computer science approach is right, then it could happen much faster, because you don't need to wait for the development of better and better brain scanners and for the neuroscientists to figure out how the brain works.
Right. Which makes me think, brings me back to a question that I've asked a couple other people that we've had on the program this year about artificial general intelligence evolving or spontaneously arriving from the internet, or from all of the computers, all of the programs, all of the people that are now connected, as it kind of resembles a brain in itself. You know, a lot of people have made that analogy that the interconnected web around the world and all the people and all the computers and software all connected to that, all the databases, is kind of like neurons in the brain, all connected in thousands of different ways, and that perhaps artificial general intelligence will arise that way, spontaneously from the internet. Now, Eliezer Yudkowsky, who we had on the show earlier, said that was extremely unlikely. And he said, basically, he said it was almost ludicrous. That would never happen. What's your take on that?
Well, yeah, I've been interested in this sort of idea of an emerging global brain for a while. And I co-organized a workshop on this in 2001, which was the Global Brain Zero workshop.
Oh, I didn't hear about that one.
That was co-organized by myself and Francis Heligan. It was at the Free University of Brussels. And it was interesting. The viewpoints expressed there were kind of all over the map. I mean, some people said, well, the global brain is already here and we don't know it. It's directing us all the time. And others had the idea that some kind of intelligence was going to emerge out of all the dynamics of kind of narrow AI programs on the internet and people interacting over the internet. And my own view, my own best guess was a little different. I mean, I don't quite see how an intelligence with anything similar to human-like intelligence is going to emerge spontaneously out of the internet without someone building it there on purpose. But I can see a viable outcome where, for example, someone builds an AI program whose goal is to kind of shape the internet into a kind of emergent mind. I think that could happen. Then you could kind of view the mass of what's going on the internet now as being sort of like the unconscious.
Yeah.
And then someone could build something which was supposed to be the short-term memory and the goal system and the motivational system of the global brain that would kind of direct the internet in a concerted way.
Or
they
could construct
I could envision that happening.
They could construct like a phenomenal self-model.
Yeah, right. Like imagine someone makes a big server farm on the scale of Google's server farm, and its goal is to be like the central mind, the central attentional focus and self of the internet.
Okay.
And that would be interesting.
But obviously, if you have to build something as big as a Google server farm, then you get back to it takes a lot of money to do that.